My name's Leo. I'm 25, and I live in a beat-up trailer just off the old highway, a few miles outside of Raleigh. The roof leaks when it rains hard, and the heater only works if I kick the side panel, but it's home, for now. I keep my work, boots by the door and my tools under the sink because there's not much room to spare. Every morning, before the sun's even up, I start the day with strong coffee and the sound of trucks rumbling down the road. It's not glamorous. But I'm not in it for glamour. I'm in it to build something real. I didn't go to college. Never wanted to. My friends used to talk about SATs and dorm rooms and student loans. Me? I was already working. Construction, painting, hauling junk, patching up fences, anything that paid. I learned early that if I wanted anything, I'd have to earn it with my hands. My dad was the same way. He worked maintenance at the local high school for over 20 years. Not a talker, but he had this quiet pride about knowing how to fix things. When I was a kid, we'd spend weekends in the backyard, him showing me how to edge the lawn, trim the hedges, lay mulch just right. I never forgot how that felt. Sweaty, tired, satisfied. That's probably where it started. I didn't know it then, but those summers with him planted something in me. Not just the basics of yard work, but the feeling of making something better than it was before. The look on his face when we'd finish a project. It wasn't loud or showy. Just a nod, a crack of a smile. That's what I chase now. That nod, that feeling. After high school, I bounced around for a few years, picking up jobs where I could, always scraping by. But there was this itch I couldn't shake. I didn't just want to work for someone else forever. I wanted to build something, with my name on it, something that could grow. So I started with what I had. Nothing. I sold my old Xbox and a pair of speakers to buy a push mower off Craigslist. A guy was getting rid of a weed trimmer too, burnt out motor, but I figured I could fix it. I watched YouTube videos for hours until I got it running. My first fleet was 2 tools held together with duct tape and faith. I printed some flyers at the library, just black and white sheets with my number and a promise to treat your yard like my own. I taped them to light poles, slid them into mailboxes, stuck them under windshield wipers. A few calls came in. Little jobs, $10 to rake leaves, $15 to mow a patchy front yard. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. I didn't have a business plan or a loan or anyone backing me up. I had my hands, a rusty set of tools, and a belief that maybe, just maybe, I could turn this into something real. Every time I hit that ignition switch and my mower coughed to life, it felt like a gamble. But I was all in. The first few weeks were brutal. I'd be up before sunrise, stuffing flyers into every mailbox I could find, hitting neighborhoods I wasn't even sure allowed soliciting. Half the time I'd come back and see my flyers crumpled in the gutter, or peeled off poles like they were never there. I knocked on doors, smiled through closed blinds, left cards at grocery stores and laundromats. I didn't have money for Facebook ads or websites, just inkjet flyers and a cheap phone line. Some days, I didn't get a single call. Others, I got people asking if I could do a yard for $10. Cash only, of course. The jobs I did land weren't glamorous. Patchy front lawns full of dandelions, backyards where dog crap blended into tall grass, weedy flower beds that hadn't seen sunlight in years. I took every one of them. I hauled brush until my hands blistered, edged curbs with a broken trimmer, even pulled weeds by hand when my tools gave out. I told myself it was all part of the process, but by the 3rd week, I was behind on rent and eating ramen for breakfast. I started lying to my mom when she asked how business was going. It's getting there, I'd say, when really I was wondering if I should start applying at fast food joints again. I couldn't sleep most nights. My mind wouldn't shut off. I'd run numbers in my head, try to figure out how to stretch $30 over a week, wonder if I'd made a huge mistake. A couple friends told me I should quit. It's cool you're trying something, but it's probably time to find a steady job, one of them said. I nodded and smiled, but it stung. I didn't want a job. I wanted a future. There's a difference. Then one afternoon, just as I was reloading my flyers at a gas station, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost let it ring out. Something told me to answer. Hi, is this Leo? The voice on the other end was calm, older, professional. Yes, ma'am, I said, standing straighter like she could see me through the phone. This is Clara. I got your flyer from a neighbor. I'm looking for someone who actually takes pride in their work. The last few guys I've hired just rush through everything. I'd be happy to take a look, ma'am. She gave me the address. It was in the upscale part of town, where every mailbox looked like it had been pressure washed the day before. My stomach flipped. I pulled up the next morning in my dented truck with the hood tied down with a bungee cord. Her house was enormous. White brick, huge bay windows, a winding stone path framed by overgrown hedges. I parked a little farther, away, so maybe she wouldn't hear the clatter of my muffler. Clara stepped out just as I was unloading my mower. She was in her 60s, elegant but not flashy, with silver hair tied up neatly and a clipboard in her hand. She walked with intention, pointed at what needed trimming, mentioned a Japanese maple that had to be pruned with delicacy. I nodded, through it all, trying to hide the fact that I was sweating before I even started. My mower sputtered when I cranked it. Twice. The third time, it roared awake, and I muttered a silent thank you to whoever was listening. I started mowing slowly, making sure every line was straight, every edge clean. I used my trimmer with precision, shaping hedges like they were topiary at a wedding. Sweat poured down my face. My arms burned. I took extra time pulling weeds between bricks in the walkway, even though she hadn't mentioned them. An hour and a half in, I caught Clara watching me from the porch. I thought maybe I'd missed something. Maybe she was about to tell me to pack up. But she just stood there quietly, arms crossed, eyes scanning the yard. When I finished, I wiped my face and walked up to her. She looked around, nodded once. You did all this by yourself? Yes, ma'am. You know, she said, you've got an eye for detail. It's rare. Thank you, I said, trying to play it cool, even though my heart was beating like a drum. She smiled. I'd like you to come back next week. There's more I'd like you to work on. I don't remember what I said after that. Just nodded, shook her hand, and packed up my tools like I wasn't about to explode with relief. That job didn't make me rich, but it was something else. Real work from someone who saw it, saw me. As I drove off, the only thing I could think was, this isn't just a lawn, it's a shot at my future. The following week, I was back at Clara's house before 8 a.m., mower humming, tools sharpened, shirt already damp from the late summer heat. She met me at the door with a short list of tasks and a smile that didn't feel like a formality. I nodded, took it all in, and got to work. By the end of that visit, I had edged the flower beds, trimmed the hedges to symmetry, and cleared out a strip of ivy she hadn't even asked about. She noticed. Over the next month, she called me back 4 times, and each time, the jobs got a little bigger. She trusted me to handle more, installing pavers, reseeding patches of dead grass, leveling soil for proper drainage. Word got out. A neighbor stopped by while I was working one morning, complimented the clean lines of Clara's lawn, and asked if I could take a look at their front yard. Then another neighbor and another. Clara, it turned out, was something of a cornerstone in that neighborhood. When she vouched for someone, people listened. My phone started ringing more often. The work was steady, and for the first time, so was the money. I was getting better, too. I started noticing the things only professionals usually catch. The way shade affects soil moisture. The signs of poor nitrogen balance in grass color. The rhythm of the blades when a mower's blade angle was just slightly off. I wasn't just mowing anymore. I was learning landscaping, slowly but with intention. I began keeping a little notebook with sketches, notes, fertilizer formulas, and quotes from clients I wanted to remember. My boots were wearing down, but I stood taller in them. I started to believe I could actually be good at this, not just passable, not just scrappy. Good. One afternoon, after I'd finished cleaning up some overgrown beds around Clara's hydrangeas, she invited me to sit on her porch for a glass of water. I almost said no. Habit, pride. But something in her tone made me pause. I'll only keep you 5 minutes, she promised. I sat. The porch was cool, shaded by an overhang, with potted ferns hanging like green lanterns above us. You remind me of my husband, she said out of nowhere. He started with nothing too. Opened a custom furniture shop with $50 and a pile of old hardwood. Everyone told him it would fail. I didn't know what to say, so I stayed quiet. He didn't care. He just worked, learned, got better. He built that business for 40 years, sold it for a fortune, and didn't change a damn thing about himself. She sipped her water and looked out across the yard I'd been working on. He always said that good work sells itself. But the trick is, you have to believe it before anyone else does. That sat with me for a while. I carried it with me from one job to the next. I started raising my prices a little. Not by much, but enough to make sure I wasn't just covering gas and lunch, and people paid it. I realized it wasn't just the work they were buying. It was the trust, the care, the way I showed up on time and walked through each project with them like it actually mattered, because it did. My friends noticed the change too. A couple of them asked how I was getting clients, like I'd stumbled onto some secret code. One of them was still doing temp warehouse shifts, clocking in and out with dead eyes. Another was back at his mom's house after a third failed job. They'd talk about plans, music, moving to another city, starting something. But it was always just talk. I didn't say much in those conversations. I just kept doing the work. Then, one day Clara called and said she wanted to show me something in her backyard. I thought it was another maintenance job, but when I got there, she walked me out onto the back patio and waved her hand toward the yard like a magician unveiling a trick. "I want to redo all of this," she said. "Full landscaping. Native plants, stone pathways, maybe a water feature, and I want you to do it." I blinked. "That's a big project," I said carefully. "I know," she replied. "It's also a test. If you can pull this off the way I know you can, I'll cover the cost of any new tools or equipment you need. Call it an investment. No strings." I didn't know what to say at first. My brain ran through everything at once. New hedge trimmers, a walk-behind mower, a wheelbarrow that didn't wobble. But it also whispered, "What if you screw it up?" "I don't want a handout," I finally said. "This isn't a handout," she replied. "It's a vote of confidence. Earn it." She walked back toward the house, leaving me standing there in that uneven backyard with my pulse pounding. I looked around and saw it clearly, not the mess it was, but the potential. I nodded to myself. I wasn't the kid handing out flyers anymore. I was ready. I spent the next week sketching plans on printer paper, watching landscaping videos until my eyes blurred, and making trip after trip to hardware stores for supplies I could barely afford. Clara gave me full creative freedom, within reason. "Make it elegant," she said, "but make it yours." The yard was a mess, uneven soil, cracked pavers, overgrown shrubs, but I could see what it could be. Soft curves of mulch beds, native grasses swaying in the wind, stepping stones leading to a quiet bench shaded by young trees. I set myself a deadline. 3 weeks. I knew that was ambitious. But if I dragged it out too long, I'd lose momentum and worse, Clara's trust. I lined up a part-time helper, a kid named Marcus I'd worked with on another job. He was green, but eager, and I figured 2 hands were better than 1. The first week went smoothly enough. We cleared debris, leveled the ground, and marked out borders. I rented a sod cutter and tore up the weedy patches like peeling off old carpet. The foundation was starting to take shape. But then the problem started. The mulch and stone delivery was delayed. "Warehouse mix-up," they said. That cost me 2 full days. Then Marcus stopped showing up. 1 missed call, 1 vague text. After that, nothing. I stood in the backyard on a hot Wednesday morning, staring at the half-dug path, hands on my hips, trying to figure out whether to call him again or just move on. I moved on, alone. I worked 10-hour days under a punishing sun, digging, planting, hauling stone by hand. My arms ached, my back screamed, but I kept going. Clara checked in occasionally, never hovering, just observing. "Need anything?" she'd ask. I'd shake my head, forcing a tired smile. Then came the storm. I had just planted the flower beds, dozens of native blooms arranged carefully around a curved border. I'd mulched them, watered them, even tied off fragile stems with support stakes. That night, lightning split the sky and the rain came down like a punishment. I sat in my trailer, watching the storm beat against the window, helpless to stop. The next morning, I drove out to the property in the gray light of dawn. The damage was worse than I feared. The mulch was washed into piles, flowers flattened, two of the younger shrubs snapped clean at the base. I stood there in the mud, soaked shoes sinking into the mess, and felt something give way in my chest. I walked to my van, climbed into the driver's seat, and just sat there with the engine off, head against the steering wheel. For a long time, I didn't move, just breathed, just listened to the silence pressing in. All that work, all that hope, and now it looked like I'd failed the one person who'd believed in me. But slowly, quietly, I came back to myself. I thought about my dad, how he never lost his cool, even when something broke right after he fixed it. "You don't stop when it's hard," he once told me. "You stop when it's done right." I wiped my face, climbed out, and got back to work. Over the next 3 days, I redid everything. I relaid the mulch, replaced the broken plants, rebuilt the path edge by edge. I stayed until the last light faded, fingers caked in soil, muscles tight and screaming. I didn't cut corners. I didn't rush. I treated it like it was my name carved into the soil. On the final day, Clara came out just as I was rinsing the last layer of dirt from the new pavers. She didn't say anything at first, just walked the length of the yard slowly, taking it all in. The winding path, the beds blooming again, the young trees casting the start of a shadow. When she turned to me, her eyes were misted just a little. "You've built more than a garden," she said softly. "You've built your future." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded, swallowing the knot in my throat. She didn't need to say more. I knew I had passed the test, not because the yard looked good, but because I hadn't given up when it fell apart. That mattered more than any flower or fence line. As I packed up my tools and loaded them into the van, I looked back at the space one more time. It wasn't just a job, it was proof. Proof that I could take chaos and turn it into something beautiful. Proof that I could be more than just a guy with a mower. I was a builder, of yards, of work, of dreams, and I wasn't done yet. A week after I finished Clara's backyard, she invited me to sit with her again. This time at the little bench I'd placed under the shade tree in the far corner. The late afternoon sun filtered through the leaves, soft and golden. She handed me an envelope without saying anything at first. Inside was a typed agreement, a personal loan, modest interest, no cosigner required, no tricks. "I want you to read this when you're ready," she said. "But know that this isn't charity. I'm not giving you anything. I'm investing because I believe in you." I didn't know how to respond. I had worked so hard to do everything on my own, even when it meant cutting corners or skipping meals. But this wasn't a gift. It was a chance, a real one. I nodded slowly, tucking the envelope into my back pocket like it was made of glass. I signed it the next day. Within 2 weeks, I had bought a used cargo van in good condition, white with low mileage, nothing flashy but clean and dependable. I had my logo printed and applied to the side. Leo's Yardworks, precision, pride, care. It was the first time I'd seen my business name anywhere other than a piece of printer paper. I stared at it for a long time before getting in to drive. With the rest of the funds, I bought new equipment, an industrial mower, gas trimmers, a power washer that didn't sound like it was about to explode. I hired a guy part-time, Jesse, who was quick to learn and careful with his hands. I even sat down one weekend and built a simple website using a free template. Nothing fancy, but it had testimonials, before and after photos, a contact form. I started using invoicing software instead of scribbling numbers on scraps of cardboard. I ordered matching t-shirts and caps with the logo stitched clean across the front. I felt ridiculous the first time I wore one. Then I saw Jesse wearing his like it actually meant something. It started to feel real. The calls came in faster now. A property manager from a nearby HOA called asking for quotes on weekly maintenance. A local law firm needed someone to tidy up the flower beds around their office building. Small contracts, but steady. I built relationships, showed up early, stayed late. I returned calls. I followed up. I remembered kids' names and dogs and favorite flowers. People talked. Word spread. In just a few months, my schedule filled up. I was no longer scraping together odd jobs. I was booked. I had regulars. I had income I could count on. For the first time since I started, I didn't feel like I was chasing survival. I felt like I was running a business. Clara didn't hover. She didn't interfere. But she stayed in the picture. Every few weeks I'd do her yard, and afterward we'd sit on the porch or under the tree and talk. Not about profits or growth. Strategies. About life. About patience. About doing something well even when no one notices. She always had a way of seeing the part of me I didn't show many people. The kid who still worried it might all fall apart. "You're doing more than mowing lawns," she said once. "You're building a name. Don't forget that matters." I never did. Autumn rolled in quietly, like it always does in the South. The air got cooler, the days shorter, and the grass slowed its growth until it barely needed trimming. Most of my clients were shifting into seasonal maintenance. Leaf removal, final, cuts before winter, prepping flower beds for the frost. I found myself at Clara's place one brisk afternoon, raking the golden carpet that had settled across her backyard. The tree we'd planted during the renovation was shedding its leaves, for the first time. Watching them fall felt like watching time pass, slow and steady, unbothered by everything else. Clara came out with 2 mugs of hot tea and handed one to me without a word. We sat together on the back step, like we had so many times before, the quiet between us filled with rustling leaves and distant birdsong. She didn't ask about business, though I knew she kept track in her own way. Instead, we talked about small things. Books she was reading, the squirrel that had figured out how to rob her bird feeder, the way her kitchen light flickered no matter how many times she replaced the bulb. I pulled a small envelope from my jacket pocket and handed it to her. Inside was a check, final repayment of the loan, every cent plus the agreed interest. She looked at it, then at me, and smiled. There was no surprise in her eyes, just calm satisfaction. "Feels good, doesn't it?" she said. I nodded. "Better than I expected." "You've done well, Leo. Better than most with twice the help." "I couldn't have done it without you," I said, meaning every word. "You could have," she replied. "You just would have taken longer." She stood, walked back inside for a moment, and returned carrying a small wooden box. Inside was a tiny bonsai tree, no taller than my forearm, its trunk twisted and strong, its leaves a deep, peaceful green. "This was my husband's," she said. "He cared for it for years. Told me once it reminded him of his business, how something small could still be strong if you had the patience to shape it right." She placed it gently in my hands. "Rooted, patient, beautiful through struggle," she said. "That's you." I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened, and I just nodded, holding the delicate tree like it was a piece of something sacred. Maybe it was. We sat there a little longer, watching the last of the leaves fall around us. The work was winding down, the season changing, but something about that day felt full. Not like an ending, but a deep breath before the next step. These days, my mornings start earlier than ever, but they feel lighter somehow. I've got 3 guys working with me now. Real crew, real uniforms, real work trucks with the logo printed clean and proud. We're booked months ahead. Residential clients, small commercial contracts, even the city called about a few park cleanups. Most days, I still pick up a rake or push a mower. Not because I have to, but because it keeps me grounded. I started a small mentorship program too. Nothing big, just a few local teens helping out on weekends, learning how to use tools, how to show up on time, how to take pride in something they built with their hands. They remind me of me. Quiet, hungry, a little rough around the edges, waiting for someone to see their worth. If this journey taught me anything, it's that you don't need to have money, connections, or a polished plan to get started. You just need grit. You need to care when no one's watching. And if you're lucky, you'll meet someone who sees what you're trying to build and decides to believe in you anyway. I didn't just grow a business. I grew up, and I'm still growing.